Good afternoon. Sponsored by Enzyme Development Corporation on the topic Economic Adulteration of Bromelain, a discussion on food safety and food fraud issues. Please welcome moderator Bill Thonak, Senior Vice President of Biddle Sawyer Corporation.
Good afternoon and welcome to our fireside chat on economic adulteration of bromelain. My name is Bill Thonak. I'm with the company Biddle Sawyer Corporation. I'm Senior Vice President. We're involved in the pharma and nutraceutical industry, and I've been involved in that industry since 1972. I've worked with a number of different companies and have been with Biddle Sawyer now for 41 years with various positions. I'm currently involved in sales and marketing activity for non-actives, the excipients, what we call excipients in the pharma and nutraceutical industry. But I also get involved with some actives that go into the pharma, the generic, OTC, and nutraceutical industries. Biddle Sawyer and Enzyme Development are kind of sister companies. We're owned by the same private ownership, but operate as separate companies. Peter Moody was the original presenter here. Unfortunately, he's not been able to make it today. Peter is EDC is Enzyme Development Corp, a brief, senior management advisor and former president. Peter has had 37 years of experience with enzymes and 50 years in the food and chemical industry. His years' experience and extensive relationships give him a wide commercial and production knowledge of bromelain. And he sends his regards and regrets that he can't be here today. To my right is Brian Murdoch, currently president at EDC as of early this year. Previously EDC's vice president. He's had over 25 years of experience in fermentation and enzyme applications in the food, feed, and industrial areas. He has a degree in biochemistry. And to my left is Andrea Dreyfus. She's a certified food scientist, quality control laboratory manager at EDC. Andrea has been with EDC for over 17 years. She has a BS in chemistry with a focus on analytical techniques and has worked her way through the laboratories at EDC. Okay, so I'll start with an initial question to Brian. What is economic motivated adulteration in food?
All right, thank you, Bill. Simply put, it's food fraud. FDA defines economic motivated adulteration as the occurrence of intentionally leaving out, taking out, or substituting a valuable ingredient or part of the food to make the food appear better or greater value. Historic cases of economic fraud have been when melamine was used in China to substitute in to try to increase the protein content in dairy. The product ended up into baby food in China, resulting in a public health risk. So that was somebody trying to just use a melamine to increase protein content and end up harming consumers. Also, there's been other examples like kappa-carrageenan used for substitute for chondroitin sulfate, and also it would be like using vegetable oil to substitute in for a high-value olive oil to try to get a higher price. So ultimately, people are just trying to make more money by selling a cheaper ingredient. We're here today to discuss the economic motivated adulteration of bromelain being sold in the USA and also other countries throughout the world, claiming it as 100% bromelain. It's estimated that about 5 million or more of adulterated bromelain has been exported into 10 different countries or more around the world. And Bill?
Thank you. What is Enzyme Development Corporation's history with bromelain?
Well, first, I'll start with what is bromelain. Bromelain's an enzyme that comes out of the stem of the pineapple plant. You can get it from the fruit of the plant as well, but it actually, the commercially available bromelain comes from the stem of the pineapple plant. EDC's been involved with bromelain since the 1950s when it was actually made in Hawaii. So they were actually extracting it from the stems in Hawaii. Needless to say, that didn't move overseas due to the labor costs, which I'll talk more about later. But EDC, during that time, we started developing bromelain applications, in particular in the food applications. Bromelain's well known for use in supplements, but we, as a company, developed a lot of food applications. Bromelain remains closely associated with production down in Thailand and Indonesia. Those are the main commercial centers for commercial grade bromelain. After over 65 years, we're very familiar with what bromelain is, its physical characteristics, its smell, its appearance, also its biochemical testing profile, which includes different protease assays and also other measurements on bromelain. Bromelain is a multi-component protease. It's not a single enzyme. So it actually gives a unique fingerprint. So it gives both a unique fingerprint both whenever you measure the protease assays, but also whenever you look at it on what's called a SDS-PAGE gel, which basically separates out all the proteins, and you end up getting a fingerprint of what the bromelain should look like. And lastly, it is, like I said, it's multiple protease site activities and it's other site activities present, so it's a very unique, distinct product.
Thank you. What did EDC, how did EDC become aware of the adulteration?
In 2023, we started noticing reports from customers which were basically asking us suspect bromelain was either not performing or there were claims being made in the market which didn't make any sense. There was no issue with our bromelain. As I mentioned, we've been in the bromelain market for over 65 years, very familiar with how it's made, what bromelain is, so we know immediately what is and is not bromelain. Claims in particular on pricing actually made no sense based on the activity they were reporting. They were reporting as high as what's called 5,000 GDU activities, which is a gelatin digestion unit, and that means a viscometric reduction method. So you basically take gelatin and you add bromelain and you drop the viscosity, and it tells you the activity level per gram. But that 5,000 units really makes no sense because a typical bromelain is only around 2,200 to 2,600 GDUs. You'll see some that may go up to around 3,000. But 5,000 is just not physically possible. You just can't get that much bromelain into per gram. Also, the pricing of this adulterated bromelain was roughly around half the level of a commercial grade product that you would see out in the market over the past 5-10 years. So they're dropping the price by half. And so probably the biggest target market that they were going after, which would be customers who actually were not even, in reality, not even testing the material as it came in. They would rely on a assay from just a supplier's assay, or they may rely on maybe a result coming in from an outside lab. So they weren't actually doing any testing. So people come in with a lower price bromelain and a higher activity. It looked really good, and so they were very interested in it. As I mentioned before, a lot of what EDC has done is work in the food industry. So we work in food processing applications. It's not, a lot of people when they identify with bromelain, they see it on a label that goes in a supplement store. But in reality, bromelain is used a lot in food processing applications. It's actually, as an example, you may use 1 kilogram of bromelain that can make as little as 1 ton of some type of functional ingredient up to 100 tons of functional ingredient. So its dosage is typically very low, but it's a very high value product that goes out into a lot of consumer goods. So these customers were reporting things like, for instance, viscosity reduction was not appropriate, or the peptide profile was not the same, because if you change a protease, you're going to get a different peptide cutting profile, so they may see a different peptide profile. And so, those customers, of course, had a check, so they kind of noticed almost immediately if there's something wrong. But in the supplement and nutraceutical industries, there's no real visible reaction taking place. They're basically taking a given amount of bromelain, and they actually added it just in a capsule, a gel capsule or something, and then they'll just sell that product based on number of activity units per capsule or per gram. So they're really just buying a product on activity and selling a product on activity. Not necessarily no added value, but they're not really adding much more to it. So the outside labs were testing GDU, and they weren't able to actually, determine whether or not the bromelain was actually being adulterated. So our over 65 years of experience allowed us to identify the issue. Additionally, we worked with other companies, one in Europe and one in Asia, that also identified and validated our findings as well. And then lastly, we also tested for other things in the bromelain. In particular, there was sulfites present. Bromelain does not have sulfites added, so it's adding sulfites, and that actually was not even on the label. So it's a sensitizer allergen was actually undeclared in some of these samples. Not all the bromelain adulterated samples, but some did have quite high levels of sulfites. So.
Thanks, Brian. Why is economically motivated adulteration of bromelain occurring now?
Well, bromelain is a economically beneficial health product. Customers know and trust the bromelain name, so it's widely recognized. You see it throughout the world, and it's used in a lot of high-value products, hypoallergenic proteins, medical applications, and it's been in high demand, and the actual pricing of it has actually continued to rise. Consumers really want this enzyme. It's been very high demand for a lot of reasons, regulatory and other applications. And what happened was back during COVID, they created a temporary supply shortage situation. Because as I mentioned before, bromelain comes from the stem of the pineapple plant. So they grow the pineapple plant. It takes about 18 to 24 months to grow an entire pineapple plant. After they harvest the fruit, after the second cutting, the stem is available for extraction for bromelain. And it's a very labor-intensive process, though, because they go out in the field with machetes by hand, cut the stems, peel the stems with machetes, and they're only getting about 1 to 2 kilograms of bromelain per 1,000 kilograms of stem. So they're actually physically moving 1,000 kilograms of stem and extracting about 1 to 2 kilograms of bromelain eventually. In Thailand and Indonesia, there were limitations to labor because they put constraints on movement of migrant labor in particular. That's what's used to harvest the stems. And this caused this unavailability during COVID. So this induced shortage, the high value of bromelain, it's a high dollar per kilogram, and a general lack of customers knowing how to test for the actual activity and whether or not bromelain is present, allowed for unscrupulous buyers to come in or companies to come in to the market. And then lastly, bromelain also started originating from countries that do not typically export bromelain, namely India in particular. So those countries, all of a sudden it's just started coming from India. And we're not done.
Okay. Thank you. Not to forget Andrea here. How can buyers protect themselves from adulterated bromelain in the market?
Buyers can protect themselves by doing other testing aside from the stated GDU, the gelatin digestion unit, enzyme development. We actually have over 70 years of analytical testing experience, and we have over 70 analytical methods run in-house. 65 of those are enzyme assays, with greater than 10 being protease assays. Within our lab, we do have a very low turnover of lab staff, so we do have a lot of staff who've been there a long time, we do all the setup, the prep, the testing, so they are very well versed in what they're looking for when they do testing. So they'll notice discrepancies even in a sample right from the start. Some of the other assays that are used in testing bromelain are MCU, or milk clot unit, and that is as simple as it sounds. It's a buffered milk substrate that clots in the presence of an enzyme within a time frame. We also have a casein digestion unit, or CDU, and we also use the FCC PU, which is a plant proteolytic assay. Those are spectrophotometric, so they are a different test than the GDU or the MCU. Historically and statistically, we've had a relationship between the GDU and MCU, with the GDU at 2,600 per gram. The MCU usually fell in at 2,200 per milligram. What we had seen with the adulterated bromelain in question here was it had a 2,600 GDU, but the MCU was about a little less than half of what we had anticipated. Some samples we tested actually had no MCU activity. MCU can go down very low activity-wise, so nothing at all was detected. Also, as Brian had mentioned, the sulfur dioxide level was present in the adulterated bromelain. We have not seen sulfur present in bromelain, so that was another indication that it may have been adulterated with another protease. The actual product itself was not the typical color of bromelain. From the historical trusted sources and testing that we've done, bromelain has a light tan color, where the adulterated bromelain was more white. Also, and please do not put your nose in an enzyme and smell it, but bromelain really doesn't have much of an odor compared to some other botanical proteases. However, the adulterated bromelain we tested had an extremely strong vanilla cake batter odor, which was extremely aromatic upon opening the container. So what we had done is had a third-party lab test SDS-PAGE gel here for a comparison. So here is the standard that's run with that for the molecular weight. This is a freeze-dried bromelain and a spray-dried bromelain from historical trusted sources that fall in line with all of our testing. And here we have our band at the 25 kilodaltons, which is a representative bromelain. However, in this adulterated sample, there is no band visible. So that was another indication that the bromelain samples that we had were adulterated. We had reported this to the FDA. To date, we have not received a response.
So to summarize, the best way to avoid adulterated bromelain is really to use a trusted supplier. You really want to use somebody who does have a greater than 10-year history working with bromelain. And also, you want to make sure that there's more than one biochemical assay, or that you can actually validate both bromelain and also other enzymes as well, to make sure it's a validly what you're buying. And then, like Andrea mentioned before about sulfites, that is also something other test for other allergens, sulfites, to see if something pops up that shouldn't be there. Allergen testing of enzymes, in particular proteases, is different though. You do need to be aware of there can be false positives if you're not careful. But we wanted to say our special thanks here to IFT for allowing us to come together and talk about this issue. Thank you for everybody attending today. Please make sure that you know your suppliers. Thank you for coming to this show. Thank you for companies for allowing quality control and other technical people to come to meet their suppliers, because it's important to know who you're buying from, and don't just trust what you see over the internet, or just promises that you see from people. We thank you for your time today, and look forward to any questions.
We do have time for one quick question, if anyone. Don't be shy. Oh, sorry, I didn't see.
on that SDS-PAGE profile,
Yep.
what is the actual active bromelain are there? That's 25,000?
Yeah, that's at the 25 kilodaltons.
Right. Yeah, that's from a third-party lab as well. So we didn't sequence it, but that adds a lot more money. But yeah, it can be sequenced.
So the adulterated product is some kind of protease also?
Yes, some type of protease. Likely, my suspicion is some type of collagenase, microbial fermentation. We've also seen other samples as well that have added papain instead of bromelain. So we have seen some of those that have come through. And to be very honest with you, we don't know what it is because we haven't sequenced it. Just very expensive process.
With the protease testing, I had mentioned that we do other assays. We did have activity with the FCC PU and the casein digestion unit and the milk clotting unit, which again are different tests. So there was activity, but it did not align with the ratio that we normally see with the GDU to MCU to CDU to PU ratio.
I mean, the low molecular weights are historically more in line with microbial proteases. So that's my suspicion, some type of fermentation microbial protease, but I don't know what exactly. I have suspicions, but I don't know. But, okay, thanks.